How does one break a sauce? You ever seen a broken sauce? Well, I bet you actually have. If you're like me and Papa John's pizza is something of a guilty pleasure around your house, they send the pizza with these little cups of special garlic dipping sauce. It's delicious, but when you open it up, sometimes it looks like that, all luscious and thick. And sometimes you get it and it looks like that, super thin, almost like just straight melted butter. Indeed, if we look on the ingredients, we can see that this is basically just a very loose margarine or fake butter. It's based on soybean oil and some dehydrated garlic powder, basically. And it's all held together with emulsifiers like soy lecithin and vegetable mono and diglycerides. Hey, what is an emulsifier? If you take some water molecules, pour on some oil molecules, and stir them up, they will disperse, but rapidly the electrochemical forces of these respective molecules push each other apart and the oil rises to the top because it's less dense, and up there it will stay. An emulsifier is some kind of molecule, like a protein, that is partially attracted to oil and it's partially attracted to water, and thus the two are bound. The resulting molecular complexes are big, and they have a lot of electrochemical drag, you could say, and so the resulting emulsified liquids are generally viscous. Emulsified sauces are thick, and therefore more of them sticks to the food that you're trying to flavor, and that is good. It's awesome, but edible emulsifiers, like the kind holding this together and making it all thick and luscious, they tend to be very, very sensitive to heat. Throw the thick, luscious cup into a hot pan, it bubbles, and immediately the soy lecithin denatures and stops working. The oil separates from the other ingredients, and thus the sauce is broken. This is how Papa John's special garlic sauce often arrives at my house, irreparably broken. I have no inside knowledge, I just suspect that these little cups just tend to get a little too hot at some point in the supply chain, possibly inside the box with the hot pizzas where it gets too hot and you just break the emulsifiers. I'm really kind of surprised this giant pizza chain has yet to come up with a more heat-stable means of thickening their sauce. I don't know about you, but I suffer from a pretty disquiet mind, which means that I'm constantly thinking about whether or not there's a more efficient way to do pretty much everything. For example, I like finding interesting coffees from independent roasters. It would be inefficient for me to go around and taste all of those coffees at all the different cities all at once by myself. It'd be far more efficient to let the folks at Trade do that and then send me a coffee that I might like, conveniently wrapped in a red Trade bag that is compostable, and that's exactly what Trade does, and Trade is the sponsor of this video. Yeah, Trade is a coffee discovery service. They've helped me find all kinds of wonderful things that I really like, including this wonderful family operation called Alma. Ooh, Passion, medium dark roast. Okay, I usually like a light roast, but let's try a dark. You just tell them generally what kind of coffee you like, or if you want to be surprised, and they'll send you bags on whatever schedule you prefer as fast as you go through it. Oh, and speaking of efficiency, you know you can just boil coffee, by the way. Give it a stir, wait 2 minutes, then you just strain it through whatever you have, and that's coffee. I like simple things, and when coffee has been roasted within 48 hours of being shipped to you, as Trade Coffee always is, it's kind of hard to screw up. You can get a fine fresh bag yourself free if you sign up for any subscription using my link, drinktrade.com/Ragusea. That's drinktrade.com/Ragusea for a free bag with any subscription purchase. Thank you, Trade. Anyway, we're going to spend the rest of this video talking about how and why other kinds of sauces do or do not break. Here we're simulating some gravy with cartoned broth and miscellaneous plant oil. We're just simulating the liquid that would be left in the bottom of a roasting tray. Notice the oil floating on top, just as we would expect. You can whisk it in to disperse the oil into tiny droplets, but they can easily float around in that meaty water, and they can link back up with each other again, and so they do. Gravy fixes this problem by simply thickening the liquid with starch. This is some cornstarch that I'm dispersing into a slurry with not hot stock. If you put it straight into hot stock, it clumps. Stir, let it come to a simmer so the starch explodes and tangles up into a water-trapping web, and now the sauce is thickened. And it is emulsified too, right? Debatably, but there's nothing holding the water and the oil together on the molecular level, and thus you do see tiny oil droplets in there. I can show you better with this little camera. The droplets will gradually link back up with each other, but not for a while because they're all stuck where they are, in the mud. Everything in there is less mobile in the starch web, and so gradually you'll get an oil slick on top of the gravy, but it takes a long time to form and you can just stir the fat back in. Plus, gravy does not break. It has no chemical emulsifiers inside it to break. When you think of gravy as being an easy sauce, this is why. Vinaigrette is also as easy as it is good. I like a little raw shallot in there, but that's extra. Some lemon juice or vinegar. I like equal parts olive oil to lemon, but most people would want like twice as much oil as that. Season that, stir, and we do break the oil up into dispersed droplets, but within seconds, the oil and the lemon juice crawl back into their respective corners. Everything is mobile in there. If you're the Kraft company, you fix this by thickening the dressing with xanthan gum. But if you're me, you just squeeze in a whole bunch of mustard because mustard is delicious and it contains some emulsifiers. Plus, it's just a lot of very fine particles for oil droplets to stick to. Stir that up and it's not only thick, but it's pretty stable. I do not see much separation happening there. It'll break eventually, but it only has to stay together long enough to get on the salad. It can break on the plate. All the key ingredients will stick to the leaves as you eat. Yeah, mustardy vinaigrette is another very easy emulsion. Things get harder when you start looking at the butter sauces. Butter itself is already a water and oil emulsion. It's a few water droplets with dissolved sugars dispersed inside dairy fat, and it's held to the fat by the casein milk protein, which is an emulsifier. Melt the butter gently without denaturing the protein, and it's already sauce. You can make it tastier and counterintuitively thicker by whisking in a little water-based liquid. This is literally water, and it's contributing raw material to the emulsion. The casein isn't super powerful in this form, but it can emulsify a little extra water. Butter and plain water emulsion is a terrific glaze for fancy vegetables. But what happens if we bring this little sauce to a boil? The casein proteins denature in the heat, they cease holding the water and the butter fat together, and they fall to the bottom in clumps. Those are the casein proteins and other milk solids just sitting on the bottom there. And now this is thin and it tastes like browned butter, which is a very different flavor. Breaking is even easier to see with a more common real-world butter sauce. I'm talking about Beurre Blanc, white butter. Raw shallots in a pan along with half a glass of wine, a big splash of vinegar. Bring that to a boil to soften the shallots and evaporate the water. Keep boiling until almost dry, but not quite. Kill the heat so we don't damage the casein, and when the bubbling stops, we can stir in a lot of butter. The emulsion is more likely to form if you stir frequently. There's a whole stick of butter in there now, and that sauce is absolutely luscious, a classic for a reason. The problem comes when you let it get too hot. Once it starts bubbling, the casein denatures. The oil and water phases split apart, and the sauce is a broken mess. It still tastes okay, but it's thin, and sauce should generally be thick, right? You can make a much more stable butter sauce if you involve some egg, like egg yolk. Egg yolks are full of lecithin proteins. You just have to be really careful about not getting the eggs too hot. Hence, you traditionally do this in a metal bowl over a pot of boiling water. This just acts as a regulator valve on your stove's heat. It prevents spikes and hot spots. We have egg yolks in there, some lemon juice, salt, cayenne pepper, and whoops, that's what happens when you get the eggs too hot. They curdle. The proteins denature, and there's lots of them, so they tangle up with each other in clumps. Let's turn down the heat and try that again. Whisk and cook gently until the eggs and the lemon juice are thick, then gently melt in basically as much butter as you could possibly want, and that is hollandaise sauce, which is more stable than Beurre Blanc because it has more and better emulsifiers from the eggs. You can even let it bubble a little bit, but pretty soon all those proteins start clumping up, and this sauce is not broken. It's too thick for the oil and the water to push away from each other. Rather, this sauce is curdled. Hollandaise curdles more often than it breaks, and the protein clumps are just gritty. Speaking of gritty, let's talk about the cheese sauces. If you just melt normal cheese inside some water or some milk to make a sauce, all the cheese proteins will clump up and fall to the bottom, and the milk fat that those proteins were formerly emulsifying will just rise to the top in an oil slick. This is not a cheese sauce, this is curds and whey with grease on top. The traditional way to emulsify a cheese sauce is with a butter and flour roux, right? This is just going to be a thickener for the milk. The reason they tell you to whisk in the liquid a little bit at a time is that otherwise you just splash milk everywhere. Once it looks like gravy, you can melt in a lot of cheese. It'll be smooth, though it'll still have that slight powdery texture that any starch-thickened sauce is going to have. And if you get it bubbling hot, like say in the oven while baking mac and cheese, well, the emulsion of the cheese is still going to break. The sauce is so thick that the fat and water can't separate far, but you can still feel those cheesy protein clumps on your tongue. I am not a fan. I'm a fan of the more modern method where you actually chemically emulsify your cheese sauce with some emulsifying salts, like sodium phosphate or sodium citrate, the latter of which you can make at home because you have citric acid. That's half a teaspoon of baking soda, just plain sodium bicarb, and that's the juice of 1 lemon, about 50 mils. Stir together, they will react and make CO2 bubbles, as in your science fair volcano, and when they're done reacting, this should not taste sour at all anymore. It should taste salty and fruity, but not tart. If it's still tart, add more baking soda. So now we have a solution of sodium citrate. It still has some of the more kind of oily notes of the lemon, so there's a little bit of lemon flavor in there, but no acidity, and that lingering lemon flavor is going to be massively overwhelmed by sharp cheddar. Into that, I like about 80 mils of milk or water or some such, and then that'll be enough to melt in about 200 grams of any cheese that you could like. This sauce has the unnaturally smooth, gooey texture that I love from queso dip and Velveeta and such, and it is ridiculously stable. I can boil this and it never gets gritty. All I have to do is thin it back out again with more liquid. The sodium citrate effectively removes and replaces the calcium that's bound inside the casein protein, and for science reasons, that just really improves the performance of casein as an emulsifier. You know what also seems to enhance the performance of casein? Just leaving the protein in the cream from whence it came. The approximately 30% fat liquid that rises to the top of unhomogenized milk, aka cream. This is such a more convenient emulsifier than butter, even though butter is just cream with most of the water and the whey protein taken out. Bring that cream up to a bubble, evaporate out some water, maybe denature some of the proteins and get them to tangle up a little, and you get a delicious sauce that is perfectly emulsified, and it is remarkably heat stable. If you ever overcook it, just stir in some more cream and it'll probably be fine. Churning cream into butter does result in some changes to the milk fat globule membrane surface, and that is my best guess as to why cream is such an easier emulsifier than butter. I don't really know, best guess, but it's true. However you keep your sauce together, just keep it together, okay?